We've been talking for 2 times already, and this is the 3rd time. And I think we need a very quick review of what we've been talking about. When we say we want to meditate, meditation is not just about how to cross your leg, where to put your hands to, how do you relax, how do you put the tip of your tongue on top of on the roof of your mouth, and how do you breathe, and that's the very basic. It's easy to learn all that. The most important in meditation is to know how your mind works first. Because meditation is about the mind, not about how how to cross your leg, where to put your hands, and what time of the day should you meditate. Can I meditate after lunch, or do I meditate after breakfast? Meditation, if you really want to go into it, is about the mind. So you really have to know how the mind works. And as a matter of fact, it's not just a meditation. For the purpose of meditation, you should know about the mind. For enlightenment, you should know about the mind. For going to the path of Buddhahood, and you need to know the mind. To lead a happy life, you need to know the mind. To understand the relationship between you and your family members, your colleagues, everybody in the society, you need to know the mind. And really, if you really know how your thinking and your consciousness works, then you can gear your consciousness to success. If you're doing temporal affairs, you're doing business, you're doing studying, that's what we call, in North America, motivation, how to motivate your mind to do whatever you want. This is a small part of the Buddhist teaching about motivation. How does our thinking, our consciousness works? We have sensory organs. When our sensory organs interact with objects, when our sensory organs, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, our body, our mind, the mind has the brain is the sensory organs too. So when all our sensory organs interact with the outside world, when you're speaking, when you're acting, when you're driving, whatever you do, every aspect of you, of your action, of your interaction, you interact with objects. When your sensory organs interact with objects, if you pay attention, if you really pay attention, what arises? Consciousness arises. Consciousness arises. And if you take a closer look at it, the consciousness, when it arises, it attached to the objects. When I say it attached to the object, at the same time, when there's interaction, there is concurrent mental functions working in your mind, which would induce you to attach to the objects, which induce you to be angry when you are shouted at, which induce you to be greedy when you want to take something away, take something that does not belong to you away. When you're attached, you don't let go of it. You attach emotionally, because of the consciousness is emotional. You may not know about it, but that's what happened. And then at the same time, your consciousness also depend on the sensory organs. Without sensory organs, you cannot see. Without eyes, you can't see. Without tongue, you can taste. Without nose, you can smell. So really, the arising of the consciousness depends on the sensory organs. And of course, if you want to get into detail, sensory organs is further categorized or divided into 2 categories. One, it's the outer material part of it, which is really the nose that you can touch, the ears that you can touch, the eyes that you can touch. There's another part which is the nervous systems of the sensory organs that you cannot touch. Yeah, you can do it medically when you operate on the nose, operate on the eyes, but as a normal person, we cannot touch the nervous systems of the eyes. So actually the sensory organs, it's in two parts. One is what you can see and what you cannot see outwardly. And then we say sensory organs are these: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Of course, the body includes not just of the body, but of the internal organs. Your heart, your spleen, your lung, everything. And then your eyes corresponds to matter, whatever there's obstructions. Matter means obstruction, obstructs space. It takes up space. Molecules, protons, electrons, to take up space, they have obstructions. Ears to sound, nose to smell, tongue to taste, body to touch. And this body is not just touching the skin touching material, but also the internal organs touches each other. Touch means they're working together to make the body works. And then the mind, of course, interact with dharmas. When you say dharmas, it's everything. The mind interact with everything. The dharma includes the past, the present, and the future too. It includes everything you can think of. The mind can think of that. So when you have all that, what is this consciousness created? Eyes, consciousness, or we call it visual sometimes. Ears, consciousness, the listening part. Nose, tongue, body, and mind consciousness. So this is something that we should know. We should know about. And this is just simplification of a school of Buddhism, of what the Buddha taught. And some people asked me last week if they want to research into more details about this school of thought of the Mahayana Buddhism. Where did they look into? What titles? So now maybe I'll give you the names of this school of thought of this Mahayana Buddhism. It is called Yogacara. The Sanskrit is, the meaning, it's a Sanskrit word, the meaning is application of yoga. And yoga means in harmony. And everything is in harmony, that's a yoga is in harmony. The body and mind in harmony. Yogacara, that means application of yoga. It is also known as Vijnanavada. Vijnana is consciousness. Vijnanavada means the branch, the school. So the school that teaches knowing. Vijnana is knowing. Everyone, eyes Vijnana, nose Vijnana, tongue Vijnana. Vijnana means knowing it. Also known as Vijnana Matra. What is Matra? What is Matra? Matra is only. So it's consciousness only. It's also known as consciousness only, Vijnana Matra in the Chinese language, 唯识. Also known as Chitta Matra. Why sometimes known as Vijnana Matra and sometimes known as Chitta Matra? Chitta means the mind that is polluted. Sometimes this school of thought wants to point out to you, our mind is not pure, it's polluted. Chitta is the mind only, the mind. Now this school of Mahayana Buddhism teaches that the reality we think, we perceive, have no reality in themselves. What does that mean? That means what we perceive is not real in themselves. It's not real. Why is it not real? What we perceive, that thing that we perceive, does not have swabhava, does not have its own nature. It is not permanent. It's only arising from causes. It's changeable. It does not have its reality. It's changeable. It's ephemeral. It's come together because of causes. It's causation. It does not have its real, true existence. That's why we say that the reality we think we perceive have no reality in themselves. There is no real experiencer. Experiencer, the one who experiences it, has no reality. Why? What am I made up of? I'm made up of causation of all these conditions. I exist. When these conditions for my existence fail, I don't exist. When I die, I don't exist. So I don't have a reality. There's no real reality of me, the experiencer, and there is no reality of what is being experienced too. What is being experienced is also one causation. So there's no reality. It's only the mind. This is only a process of my mental attachment. Everybody clear with that? It does not mean that, oh, it doesn't exist. It exists. How come I say it doesn't exist? It exists in form, but it doesn't exist in reality. Its existence is short-term, changeable. It exists in causation. This is something that is not difficult to understand if you think deeper. Then people ask, what is it that knows? Who knows? Who knows all these things? The knowing explained by the Buddhist philosophy of the 8 consciousnesses. The 8 consciousnesses know. The mind knows. The mind knows that there's no reality. The minds know that reality doesn't exist. So it's only the mind only. The whole thing is the process of the mind. Okay, so if you want to know, research more, you get into all these different names, and you will get lots of answers for them. And what I've been talking about would serve as a beginner's approach for you to probe deeper into what you want to understand. If you want to understand Buddhism, if you do not understand your mind, you're not in the right track. If you just worship, blind faith, prostration, burning your incense, offering your flowers, that's just the surface of Buddhism, not the real Buddhism we've been talking about. It's about the study of nature, of you. There is a very famous poem in Japan which explains this concept of consciousness only. And I don't understand Japanese, but I got the English translation for it. I would like to share this poem with you. And in Japan, there's a province called Nara. In Nara, there is a Sarasawa pond, Kofukochi Temple. There was a professor talking about consciousness only, and he quoted his own poem, which became very famous in Japan, teaching Mahayana Buddhism, the mind-only Buddhism, which Nanamachata. So I'd like to share it with you. Okay, an example. At the clapping of hands, the carp comes swimming for food, the birds fly away in fright, and a maiden comes carrying tea. The clapping of hands, right? Clapping of hands is just one event. I clap my hand, pop, clap my hands. This is the one event. The carp comes swimming for food. The koi fish, they thought the master is coming to feed them with food, so all these koi fish swimming, struggling to the top of the water, waiting for the food to be served to them. That's what the carp, the koi, understands. That's what the carp, the koi, knows. He knows that clap of the hands means food is ready. But this clap of hands to the birds are not the same. The birds scared that someone is going to be shooting them. The shot of a gun, clap. So the birds fly away in fright, flying everywhere, trying to avoid being shot. So the birds fly away in fright. And then, at the clap of his hands, a maiden comes serving tea. In Japan, there are maidens who serve tea, who make tea in the tea ceremony. He said the master, it's signaling that we bring the tea to them. So you can see that just one event, it does not have its reality. Its existence does not have any reality, but its perception also does not have any reality. It creates different perceptions. So how can you say that clapping of hands has a reality of its own? Even the sound it produces has no reality. It creates different perspectives. Why it creates different perspective? Let's go on to see something more. The same event is interpreted differently by different people. The reality as we understand it is all defined by our mind's interpretation of things. We project our knowing of reality constantly. That's what we call consciousness only. Everybody has a distorted, limited view of reality, forming one's understanding of reality differently. Now, what does that mean? The koi fish, he thought that's the same event. He thought food's going to be served, the maiden comes carrying tea, and the birds fly away in fright. They all have different perception, different understanding. Why? Because they have different karma. The birds reincarnate into birds is because of causation, because of many reasons, many karma they created in the past and present. And the way they understand it is based on their survival. So every karma is different. Who created this karma? God? No, you yourself created this karma for you. Nobody else. So your karma is different, your past actions were different, what you have done is different. You're responsible for your karma. The reason why you're poor now, the reason why you're so hectic in your life, the reason why you fail, or the reason why you're so successful, the reason why you had a divorce, the reason why somebody had a family, happy family, all this is because of karma, of what you have, of all the causes that you have created for yourself. You are the master of your own destiny. You wrote your own script. So everybody, because you have different karma, you have different distorted perception of different things. Because everybody has a different internal commentator in their mind. When they look at things, they comment on it. This is good, this is bad, this is what I want, this is what I hate, this is what I love. They have an internal commentator that carry this distorted, limited, biased view. And they are different. And every time when you see things, every time when you perceive, when you listen, when you think, this internal commentator will give you the bias, will affect you. And this internal commentator is made up of all this karmic energy that you created yourself. Don't blame God for a bad internal commentator. For a commentator that's so biased, so angry, so jealous, so depressed, so sick, or for a commentator that is so intelligent, so enlightened. You got your own internal commentator in every one of you. The problem is our belief in the infallibility of our own experiences, not the experience themselves necessarily. So the clap of the hands is not shooting at the birds. The clap of the hands is objective. It's you who is subjective. A few bad words of yelling and shouting and scolding, those words are objective. They're not poisonous, but your mind treats it as poison and you act with anger. If somebody yells at you when you're driving on the road and somebody yells, do you know how to drive? Yell at you and all that. It depends on how you took those words. Those words are not poisonous. It's your mind that poisons those words. You want to stop and you want to fight, you want to honk. You want to yell back. And in the process of doing all this, you lost your mind, you ran into a lamppost, or you bump into somebody, or you're actually involved in a fight. And then the police came and we created more karmic energy. And blood all over the place. Or you were drunken driving. Oh, so much to talk about in these things. So that's an example of consciousness only. And then we say, okay, when I look at something, my thinking processes, I interact with external. And how does my internal work? The Buddha gave us details as to how our mind works. If you know how your mind works, then you can reform your mind. Not only when you know how your mind works, can you reform your mind. If a prisoner wants to be transformed into an ordinary, good, virtuous person, he has to change. He has to understand that his conduct is bad. So you really have to understand your mind. How your mind actually... it's easy to know that all my senses interact with outside. Then how do my inside work? We say, okay, we have a thinking process. And then we say, okay, we interact with the outside world, externality, with the outside, all our eyes interact with matters, and my ears interact with sound, and all those, I know those interactions in my consciousness created. But how does this internality works? Let's get into more details of that. Then if we get into more details, then we know how the mind works, and when we do meditation, we know the problems. Then we can stop the problems and create this purity. We call it the cognition process. We cognize something, cognition, the thinking process. It includes, of course, perception, conceptualization, flashback, your memory, analysis, volition, which includes applied thinking, sustained thinking, investigation and scrutiny, and the involvement of numerous concurrent mental functions. Numerous concurrent functions. It does not matter how numerous they are. The Buddha went into detail of these numerous concurrent functions, and let us know more about it so that we can tackle them. But before we get into the concurrent mental functions, we say generally we have a subject and an object. The subject is the experiencer. The object is that being experienced. And when we're doing this thinking process, there's interactions, and we would like to finally broadly generalize externality and internality, so that when we practice meditation, we immediately know what happened roughly before we get into detail of concurrent mental functions. So we want to get into the 4 aspects of cognitions and 3 kinds of objects that we experience. And actually we're getting into a very, very advanced psychology course. But that's Buddhism. What kind of cognitions we have, and how many 3 kinds of objects that we have. Cognition is the thinking process. The objects is what the cognition cognize. So the first one is the externality, the objective aspect, raw reality as it is. This is a flower. That's raw reality. That's only a flower. Now, this reality is not the same reality as we're talking about. Reality means it is really a flower. You can't say it is not a flower. The objective aspect of it is a flower. The second is the subjective aspect, the sensory perception of reality. The objective aspect is 相分. The subjective aspect is 见分. The witnessing aspect is cognition of this perception. 自证分. The re-witnessing aspect, thoughts that follow cognition, is 正知正分. Let me give you an example. If you're looking at a watch, you want to say, okay, this is now, they're looking at the clock, this is, say, 11 o'clock. The clock is what I look at, right? That's the objective aspect. 这个是相分. That's the objective aspect. 这个是相, 外相, objective aspect. The clock as it is. And then, who sees the clock? The subjective aspect, the sensory perception of that clock in my eyes. That's the subjective. My eyes is subjective. See that? My eyes is 见分. The witnessing aspect, cognition of this perception, because, oh, it's 11 o'clock. I know it's 11. I know this is 11 o'clock. Because immediately I know. The real witnessing aspect is 正知正分, thoughts that follow. And then I voice it out in my mind. Oh, it's 11 o'clock. Because my eyes look at that object, my subjective look at that, and then in my witnessing, oh, it's 11 o'clock. I haven't spoken it out, I haven't confirmed it, and then I say, oh, it's 11. That's the re-witnessing part of it. We always go through this process. We see Mr. Chan, my eyes see Mr. Chan is the objective aspect, and my eyes see it as a subjective aspect, and then I cognize that as a person, that is a witnessing aspect, and then I say, this is Mr. Chan, re-witnessing aspect. You understand? That is how cognition works. And of course, this is the generalization of how cognition works. And then objects, as they are themselves, they are the raw experience, that's the clock. Objects, there are three kinds of objects, you know. Objects as they are, clock. Objects that are illusion. What are these objects that are illusion? Give me an example. Can you give me an example? As objects that are illusion, because there are three kinds of objects. Objects that are real, they're raw experience. This is a computer. This is a room. How can you say it is not a room? This is objects as they are themselves. Xing, jing. Another kind of objects that are illusions. What are these objects? I'm dreaming. I'm sleeping and I'm dreaming. I dream of Hong Kong. That in my mind is an illusion. It's a dreamt image. Not even a shadow is a real shadow, you know. But when I dream of, say, downtown, I'm dreaming of the Colosseum in downtown, and that is an illusion in my mind. That's an object of illusion in my mind. There's no downtown in my mind. There's no Colosseum in my mind. There's just an illusion, right? Okay. The third is objects that are originally derived from raw experience but falsely perceived. 代智圣智, 代智境. What is these? Objects that are originally derived from raw experience but falsely perceived. Now, if I say a distant mountain, not a distant mountain, that's just something simple. Yes? A mirage? Yeah, mirage. Yeah, a mirage. Another example is, say, if I see a shadow with horn there, I say, that's a cow. There's a cow. But it's something that it carries the original experience, the originality of it, but it's falsely perceived. There's some smoke in there, but there's no fire. Oh, there's a fire, but only smoke, but of course there's no smoke without fire. But if you go into a corner and it's just shadow with horn, you think there's a cow in there. It carries a little bit of the raw experience, but it's not actually a the experience itself. It's falsely perceived. It's different from illusion. Illusion is something that is not telling anything that is of the real experience. For example, a mirage. A mirage is falsely perceived, right? But it carries a little bit of the climate, a little bit of the heated weather, a little bit of the wave. So it carries a little bit of the truth of the reality, but it's actually an illusion. That's a good example. An illusion is absolutely, you don't have any heat, you don't have anything. It's just an illusion. But a mirage is something that is only falsely perceived. But it still carries a little bit of the desert, because you can't see a desert mirage if you're not in the desert. So you carry a little bit of that reality. All objects are classified as that. No objects would not fit into these categories. This is number one, and I'm closing my eyes and I think about the Colosseum, I think about the City Hall, or the museum. That's the second one. It's an illusion or my dream. The third one is that Mr. Chen in there? It's not. It's just a shadow. But there's a person in there. Mr. Chen is a person, but that person throws a shadow, and I thought that's Mr. Chen. It's wrong. It's falsely perceived, but there's a person's, walking by. They still carry a little bit of the reality. All objects are like that. All right? So this is what it is in understanding cognitions and the three aspects. And let us carry it a little further into some details now. What are the concurrent mental functions? Because when we perceive objects, when our subjective is perceiving objective, what actually happened in our mind? This is regarding the externalities and how we perceive things. But what actually happened in the perceiving? What should happen in our thinking? The Buddha gave us this analysis. In the Chinese language, we call it Xin Suo. There's 51 in there. There's 51 of these concurrent mental functions. There's 51 of them in there. And there's omnipresent functions, 片行, which include attention, contact, sensation, perception, and volitions. Object contingent functions, 别境. So we have desire, resolve, mentalness, concentration, and intelligence. Wholesome functions, 11 wholesome functions, and 4 indeterminate one, uncategorized functions. That is regret, sleep, investigation, and scrutiny. This is 51, these concurrent mental functions. Whenever your thinking process cognizes externalities, what happened to the internalities? All these things work. All these concurrent mental functions work. So what you really need in meditation is you really have to know how your mind works. You really have to know how you think. If you really know how you think, you are the master of yourself. Don't you want to be the master of yourself or the slave of your own mind, which induce you to do unwholesome deeds, unwholesome actions? Okay, so I have a lot more to tell you, but I would like to stop at this point. What I'm going to tell you, we're going to analyze every one of these in details so that you know how you think, right? So let's leave it to next time.